Welcome to Public Comment. This is getting up and rolling, and I have a guest that I've definitely been waiting on for this show. You're going to see him often on Public Comment because this is the platform where Detroit is different, delivers different pulse-based information in and around the city. I'm your host, Khary Frazier, and today I have none other than Mr. Theo Pride of Detroit People's Platform. Theo, how you feeling?
I'm feeling good, my brother. Glad to be here. You know, this like my second home, so glad to be back.
Definitely. And you're going to be on more and more and more. And today we're talking about Community Benefits Ordinance.
Yeah,
So first, a lot of people don't even know what's going on with community benefits agreements in the first place, but we're going to break it down because in 2016, Detroit was forward thinking and became one of the first municipalities, especially this large, to state this ruling to exist for all developments, that you have to have a community benefits agreement between the community and developers entering into communities. This is very key so that people aren't just run rickshaw over and not treated fairly, because fair treatment is what we are for. So with that, Theo knows so much more about this. So let's open up the floor to you. First off, in 2016, what happened with that ruling? What happened? How did that case get won? What was the
yeah,
role of People's Platform and so many other things?
yeah, for sure. Like, absolutely. Forward thinking. Detroit was forward thinking as a municipality, mandating, right, putting on the books an ordinance, a law that mandates that when developers come in, they have to sit down with community and hammer out and identify community agreements along with development impacts, negative development impacts, so those things can get addressed. But I do want to say this: it's not like the city kind of progressively decided to right dig into it, right, and put that on the books, right. It really was a push from community, and it really started right after bankruptcy, when we seen all of the development around the Q line. We seen the development with a Little Caesars Arena. So we started to see a lot of development pop up at the same time, or juxtaposed to the idea of like municipal austerity. Like, oh, we in bankruptcy, we ain't got enough money for schools and roads and neighborhood beautification, but we got enough money to give Dan the Illages and Penske and everybody else millions and millions of dollars for development. So what you started to see was grassroots organizations step up and try to hold developers accountable, right? Coming into the communities and being extractive. That kind of movement in terms of community benefits. And I want to say this too. Community benefits is a long established community strategy to hold developers accountable. And so we've seen this practice the late 90s, early 2000s, mostly in California, but we've also seen it in New York.
That you getting right into like breaking down just the definition of community benefits, and what I pull up, I mean, just like, even if we just search the term so people can understand what's happening. But even as you were saying, this is something that is big. So the Community Benefits Ordinance, even with the city of Detroit, Community Benefits Ordinance is a law that requires developers to proactively engage with the community to identify community benefits and address potential negative impacts of certain development projects. The ordinance was approved by the city, by Detroit voters. So voters got this on the ballot and voted unanimously for this in 2016, and amended by the city council in 2021. When projects trigger CBO process, a neighborhood advisory council is established. That's one. So we're going to talk a lot about, like, is this following through? And furthermore, what's happening? How do you find out about the pulse? Because there's still a lot of people that don't know anything about it. Okay, so when the CBO process is started, a neighborhood advisory council is established with 9 representatives from the project's impact area to work directly with the developer and establish community benefits, which are included in the final development agreement approved by the Detroit City Council. So City Council also plays a role there based on our CBO. Since voters approved the ordinance, residents have secured a number of commitments and benefits from developers for their communities through the process. So far, the process has secured key benefits for the community, such as $2.5 million to build 60 outdoor basketball courts in parks across the city, from the Pistons practice facility CBO process, the restoration of an abandoned school field for sports and recreation use, including a skate park and free programming for local youth from the Herman Kiefer CBO process, a commitment to providing more affordable rental for low-income residents for the, I guess, Weigel Midtown West CBO process, and dozens more outlined here. And they have like a link if you go to the city of Detroit and just look up community benefits ordinances. So it just talks about how does community benefits ordinance work. The community benefits ordinance applies when a developer project is 75 million or more in value, receives $1 million or more in property tax abatements, or receives $1 million and more in value of city land sale or transfer. Right. So those are kind of some of the bullet points. And I just went over the city's definition. Now you're giving us the community's definition to get that fight off the ground, especially coming off the shadows of bankruptcy in the city, which we still definitely call that a false bankruptcy in the first place. It took some organizing, and it actually kind of brings a groundswell to the organization you work with, the Detroit People's Platform, as the 10-year anniversary is going on pretty soon. So you can shout that out. But I'm guessing you all had a lot to do with this. Shout out Sarita Scott. I know what she was doing with CDAD at the time, like, you know, some of the players, and you may have been more so from the outside in before then, but the community got this to the ballot to vote to it.
That's right.
And I see what's listed on the city's website. Why did this need to be amended a couple years later from 2016 and 2021?
Yeah, excellent question. Yeah, so you're right. This really was a grassroots community initiative and effort. And so in 2006, but you know, before that, it had been a long process to get it on the ballot. So it was a ballot initiative. The ordinance that we see pass, the one where it is a $75 million trigger in terms of total project investment and $1 million or more in tax incentives or land transfers and so forth. That was really the counter proposal offered by the power structure, and namely Scott Benson and the administration and so forth. That was not the initial community benefits agreement and ordinance plan that community had envisioned.
What was the initial? What was missing from the initial one that community was demanding?
Right. The first one, right, the project investment threshold was much lower. I want to say it was something like 15 million.
Okay.
It was 15 million, so it was much lower. And the tax incentive threshold was much lower, much more lower. And so essentially, right, what this does, it lowers the floor for what is captured, right, and what type of development is moved to, right, the community benefits agreement process. And so by them raising, right, the floor so high, all you capture in this process is huge, right, big time, right, mega developments. And that's important because even though we've seen a few over the last 5 years, before then we had virtually seen no developments over $75 million. Right. And so the idea of making the floor that high was to just capture a minute, right, portion of all of the development that's occurring in the city. And so if we think back and look at all of the CBAs that have occurred in the city, it's a small percentage of all the development that's going on in the city, right? So think about it. If a developer comes in, and we've actually seen this, Khary, right? We've seen development come in at 74 million, 73.5 million. You don't think that was intentional and that was strategic to create luxury development that just misses the trigger of $75 million?
I have this question too. So in that, I'm a businessman, you know, I'm gonna ask some business questions. Sometimes I start a project and the scope of work changes, but what's initially listed on the budget may be 70, right? So it could start off $70 million, and I'm not doing any projects like that, but Creative Differences Marketing Inc. does welcome projects like that for those that are checking us out on public comment. And definitely, you know, working with us, you're going to definitely be connected to community. But with that being said, I'll start off a project. Let's say it starts off with 70 million listed. Scope of work changes. Supplies, it's things get international trade, things slow things down, material costs went up. So now we need to write in an additional $12 million to the project. That moves the project to an $82 million project. Is it for whatever the initial budget is listed as? Because as I go into most business projects and just always know that it's going to be 1/3 more. Or is it just keeping count throughout? And then, so let's just start there. If the scope of work changes on costs, does that impact things?
Hey, that's what we're still trying to figure out. And I'll give you a perfect scenario. I'll give you a perfect scenario. And we brought up these issues during the AMC headquarters development in District 7. I don't know if folks know where that's at. Is Plymouth, Hubble, that area.
Let me help my black folk for sure. All right. If you ever been to Chuck's Millionaire Club, and you probably have over there in that footprint. All right. Continue.
That's right. But it's an iconic building, old American Motors Corporation's headquarters. And of course, it's been sitting dilapidated and blighted for many, many years. Anyway, a developer acquired the land, decided to develop it, and came in with a development cost figure, an estimate of $73.8 million. Right. And they were collecting
so right there. Like right there. Like that exactly. Kid, like you need like a 2.0 to graduate. They like a 2.0000001.
Exactly. And matter of fact, check this out. There was a strong community push, right, by a lot of people in District 7, but not just District 7, a lot of people who was kind of invested in that old Art Deco architecture, right? Because the building is really, really right historic, and they wanted the developer to preserve the edifice, but it would cost much, much more. If they would have preserved the building and the Art Deco architecture, it would have pushed them over 75, which would then absolutely officially formally trigger them into the CBA process. And so I think that played a part in why they didn't want to preserve the building. Even they would even got historic preservation tax credits to do so, and they still didn't want to. But anyway, this is what we were arguing. We was like, yo, they had $73.8 million. This is just a project estimate. And we know that all estimates have a high and a low. And so we were asking, is this the high or is this the low? Or is this the median? Is this the median of that? Because we want the high end, because there's a possibility it could exceed 75 million, which then will trigger the CBA. And so we could get no official answer. The only answer that we got from the DEGC, which is the Development Economic Growth Corporation, they handle all of the tax incentives and the analysis around who gets the tax incentives and why and so forth. All they could tell us, like, this is the project cost that has been handed in, and this is what we're going with. Right. And so we wanted to know about even the monitoring of the project costs moving forward. So at the end of the day, so this is that is the estimate that they gave you. But in real life, if it costs $76 million to build at the end of the day, then how do you then retroactively go back and secure community benefits for residents?
Okay, and the other question I have, and you mentioned the DGC plays a role in watching and monitoring what the costs and things are. Who plays the role? Like, it's just like parenting. You know what I'm saying? Like a parent, you can make all the rules you want for your children, but you also have to present said consequence, and you also have to have some type of monitoring system. So it's like, hey, if you don't clean your room, you're going to be grounded. If you don't check on seeing if the room's clean.
That's right.
And then also, if they don't have an understanding of the consequence, you're probably not going to see a room get clean. You know what I'm saying? Because obviously they're probably not cleaning the room for you to even to bring this up. So this is voted on by the people, not necessarily the elected officials. This isn't something brought forth through them. Was there a department through the executive body? Was there something maybe through the ombudsman? Like, who's monitoring this to even check on these sites to follow through? Because even with a body of 9 people in an advisory, if I'm said company and I submit who my 9 people are, who am I sending that email to?
That's right. And so this is how this works, right? And so in that ordinance, there is, right, a part of the law that talks about compliance and monitoring and enforcement, and consequences. And who chiefly kind of handles the compliance process of it, the monitoring of those benefits. So let me say this, right? So at the end of the day, what happens is there is a contractual agreement between the community that has been negotiated by the neighborhood advisory committee, right? And they are the stand-in, right, for the community. They sit down and actually do the negotiating with the developers, right?
Who makes a decision on who's on that advisory committee?
Which is very important, right? And like you said, it's 9 people and it's an alternate, right? And so 2 people are chosen by the community. And so what happens is there'll be an initial meeting about the project and the NAC, who wants to be on the NAC. Community, you have to live in the impact area, and that's determined by the DEGC, right? And they have a formula how they determine, right, the impact area.
Have they shared that formula?
They have shared that formula, and it changes. It's problematic though, Khary, because I've seen them change their rationale as to what constitutes the impact area. So there to me, there's no consistency in terms of how it's applied, and so that's a problem, because if community is trying to prepare for and anticipate what is to come with a development, right, is all over the place, and so it makes that kind of preparation difficult.
So like recently, as we know, the I-375 project just did an Eastern Market, like I went by there with Suzanne. I guess that was that part of some of that process with the community, where they had like all these maps of like, hey, where would you want to see trees? Where would you want to see this? And it was like little stickers that, like, you know, if you like this, you could put the sticker there and things like that. But I live on 12th Street in Davidson, you know what I mean? I say where I live and all that stuff, but I'm nowhere near what I would consider the impact zone of I-375, but I did have the ability to go in and vote. I did not, but I could have, you know what I'm saying? Like, is that like similar? Like, you know, that call to action?
It's kind of similar, but that process is specifically handled by the state, but the rationale is kind of similar, where you publicly invite people to the space, and then you make decisions, but specifically about that initial, right, NAC meeting, right, they are specifically looking for people in the impact area, and the way in which they verify that is simply your ID. Right. So if you know, they look at your ID, if you have a residence and an address within the impact area, boom, you're good to go. Right. And so community, right, and community are the people who are in the impact area, and they get to vote on 2 members, right, to sit on the NAC.
So that's 2 of the 9.
2 of the 9.
That seems pretty low, but
pretty low, right? Exactly. Extremely low. And if we have some time, we can talk about why that is hugely problematic, right? In terms of compliance, in terms of the actual benefits.
I mean, just being the fact that it's the community council, and the community only got 2 people. It'd be like if it was the business council and it was 7 people from the community and 2 people from the business. Like,
exactly.
I don't think that would be equitable.
Absolutely. We can already see on his face, right? That's hugely problematic. And so 2 other members are chosen by the at-large council. So we're talking about Mary Waters and Coleman Young in this case. Another one is chosen by the council member that the district that the development's, right, the district that the development is occurring in, right? And
are there like residency rules for these people?
You in terms of like who gets to run for the NAC,
who can be on it, because like, you know, like, let's say
the only people who can be on the NAC are those who live in the impact area, right?
So even the ones picked by the at-large council are still people that are
That's right.
So now I get it. But as an at-large council person, so I guess that's like technically another 2 from the community. And then you get the other council member in that area as the 5th. Who are the other 4 people?
The other 4 are chosen by planning and development, right? And so
how does planning develop? what's the relationship between planning and development and community? I wonder, you know what I'm saying? And that's a big group of people for planning and development to select.
Right. And right, kind of, I think bureaucratically, the rationale is that these processes are nestled within the Department of Planning and Development, right? And so they handle the zoning and they handle the particulars of the actual development. They are the ones who actually have the development plan and all of these type of things, right? And so, right. And then also too, right, I want viewers to kind of understand this as well, why this is problematic, because those who work in planning and development and those who get to appoint community members to the NAC, in that case, right, none of those people from planning and development are elected officials. So they aren't held accountable by the public. Those people, right, are appointed by the mayor. So we're essentially talking about we're essentially talking about people who are a part of the administration, right?
The
They get
executive branch.
the executive branch
Mhm.
administration. They get a bulk, they get a huge portion of say of who sits on the NAC, right? Four out of
Hmm.
the 9 members, essentially, right?
Yeah. Okay. So, okay, now that I have that scope, let's get into like just the follow through. Um, what the consequences? What has the monitoring been like? What successes have we seen thus far with this? And then, do you think that the same way that there was a touch up to it in 2021, do you think that this may still be just like, I guess, most legislation and policy in our nation? Will this be ever evolving, and how soon does it need to ever evolve?
ASAP, right?
Mm.
This thing needs to evolve, and it needs to transform, and it needs to be amended like yesterday.
Mm.
And I think the amendments that happened in 2021 are a start, but it needs to continue. And that's because of this, right? Those who are in charge of facilitating the process, right, of the CBA have taken the ambiguity of the law, right, itself to then take advantage of community in the process, right?
Mhm.
So what I'm saying is that, right, if there are loopholes or if there are inconsistencies or if there are ambiguous type of portions of the law, they take it upon themselves to interpret it in ways that advantage the developer, right, and not ways that protect the community.
Can you give an example?
For example, like those who sit on the actual NAC, right? You would think is common sense that there should be stringent, right, conflict of interest policies that prevent people who are developers, who are political operatives, who are friends of the developer, who sit on economic development authorities to not be a part of the NAC. But that is not what happens, right? So, for example, in the District Detroit NAC, we had Chris Jackson, who is a developer, who is very chummy with Olympia, and who has many developments downtown. And I'm sure they share a lot of the same internal friends and networks and so forth. We had Jonathan Kinlock, who is a Wayne County commissioner. He is a political operative. He just did a deal with the DDA in which to cut a deal with the DDA about tax incentives, right? And so and so like working in those areas, right, they already have vested interests, right, in the development and the tax incentives beyond just being community members.
That's
Right? They
interesting.
have invested interest in being developers, political appointees, and political elected officials and so forth.
In that's unique that you speak to that. Also, I assume definitely like midtown and downtown is so many NACs that exist. Could I sit on multiple ones? Like, could I be on like, almost like everything downtown? Like, hey, they just pick me. I know planning and development's gonna pick me. I got a relationship, why exhaust yourself trying to find somebody new? You know what I'm saying? Just get him on it. Can I sit on multiple?
Absolutely, which is another problem. And
Do
so they
multiple
take
people sit on multiple?
multiple people sit on multiples. In the District Detroit, in the District Detroit one, we had there was Chris Jackson has sat on multiple, right? NACs. There was another dude, his name was Regilio. He had sat on multiple NACs, talked about how he's influenced multiple community benefits agreements, and he's somebody who is connected to the development world. Right. So those type of conflict of interest, right, don't get identified and don't get corrected in ways that ultimately benefit community. Why? Because the ordinance is not very, very clear about how to handle conflicts of interest, right? And so, right, planning and development certainly could make it more stringent if they want to, because it is some ambiguity in the law, but they could interpret it in ways that make it more stringent and harder for developers to be on the NAC, but they don't. They make it so it's much easier, right, for them to sit on the NAC and influence the actual final product.
Are NAC meetings open to the public, or are they made a decision based on what that group agrees to?
The ordinance is written in ways where it has to be open to the public. So they cannot, as a body, have a closed meeting, right? As a body, of course, they can correspond with each other and so forth about things. But if they are deliberating about the NAC, if they are deliberating about the development and the particularities about the development in terms of how they do their work and what they are charged to do as a body, they must have it open to the public. And we've had different type of NACs and we've had different type of developments where that wasn't made clear. And basically folks was having backroom meetings, right, that weren't privy to community, and that's problematic. But the ordinance states that it has
Open Meetings Act.
Yes, open meeting. Yep.
Within that Open Meetings Act, you said a body of 9. Is it a majority rule? So you just need 5 votes?
Majority rules.
So technically, the planning commission already got 4, more than likely line step. So it's really just winning over one more person from the 5 people in the community. That's interesting. And also the relationship between the developers themselves and community in these NAC meetings. Like, does the developer, have to submit information? Hey, things are going beyond scope of work. We're having a tough time hiring people in your community. I know we committed to, like, here's a classic one, and I even read that in that. We committed to low income. If the community looks up and you say, hey, man, your low income is $1,800 a month, that's not low income in our community. Like, how does that discourse happen? Does this body exist just during the development of the site, or does it carry on over after the site is already built and established?
So technically it carries on right throughout the duration of the community benefits agreement, right? And so if benefits are being meted out and doled out over the course of 15 years, right, then that NAC technically, right, is charged to stay together and to enforce, right, the agreement itself over that period of time, right? But the time in which the negotiation happens only occurs during the weeks. I think officially it's like 7 weeks, right? Or 6 to 7 weeks where there is an official negotiating process, but it can be extended if the NAC so chooses to do so. It can be extended beyond, right, what is formally permitted. I think like 6 or 7 weeks or anything like that. But they get a certain a period of time to sit down and actually hammer out and negotiate the community benefits agreement. At the end of that process, what they have is a contractual agreement between community and developers about what the benefits the community will receive, right? And so after that, what happens, the NAC is supposed to stay together and to make sure that the developer complies, right, with the demands, right, and the items in the actual community benefits agreement. Now, there is a biannual compliance report and process that the NAC should go through to make sure that all of the items are being met and all of the benefits are being actually addressed.
That's deep. And I'm guessing that document is open to the public when we bring you back, and we're going to bring you back maybe over like the next 4 weeks or something. That's a good idea. We should pull up the Little Caesars Arena one.
Let's do it.
And we should look at least a little bit at it, and maybe look at some other ones too,
Yeah. Let's look at this because we just cracked this open. Let's look at the Pistons, right? Even though they did a voluntary one, right? But I think there's some absolutely problematic things with the Pistons one, because
Hmm.
they like to prop up the fact that so many dollars, millions of dollars were being invested to build basketball courts and all of these type of things. It was kind of one of the first things that was highlighted in the city's
and the
description.
city's description of what the community's getting with the CBOs. Yeah.
Exactly. So let's look into that thing, and then also too, let's look at Little Caesars agreements, compliance reports, and I think that viewers and the community get a real sense of how they sidestep a lot of this stuff. And so a lot of it is smoke and mirrors. A lot of it's smoke and mirrors. And if we don't have a strong enforcement process by which community can say, hey, you didn't do A, B, and C, and now we're going to take back money, and now we're going to penalize you in these type of ways. Like you said, the scenario, the analogy you gave about cleaning up your room, right? Punitive processes by which to push people to actually do the right thing. Those processes aren't strong enough.
Okay. Yeah, we're gonna leave you there because we bring you back on this topic for sure and other things. But I'm fascinated with this because right now it seems like on both sides people keep bringing up, oh well, it's a CBA over there, it's a CBA over there, and it is brought up almost to me as a way to dismiss any questioning about the equitable ways that developers are engaging in community, as if, oh, it's a CBA, so that means that it's already taken care of and it's good. Don't even worry about it. They got a CBA. But let's unpack and let's really look into like what's really in these CBAs, and if that is bringing equity to community, it definitely is a start. But let's make sure we get to the finish. With that, shout out what's happening with the 10-year for the People's Platform, and then we close out.
June 3rd, right, at 11 a.m. We are having our 10-year reunion, Detroit People's Platform, our 10-year reunion. So 10 years ago, we started with community activism, empowering majority Black Detroit in terms of racial justice, economic justice all across the city. And we're going to have some wonderful speakers talking about the future here in Detroit in terms of activism and Black empowerment. It'll be at Mary Grove College on 6 Mile. That's 11 a.m. So send me an email, right? If folks want to attend, you do have to pre-register. And so if you want to get pre-registered, contact me, Theo Pride, Theo at DetroitPeoplesPlatform.org, and we'll get you all squared away.
That works perfect. Thank you so much.
All right, my brother.
Yep.